Let's talk about fusion. The ultimate energy dream. It's the power of the stars, promising clean, practically limitless energy for all of us here on Earth. But if we're going to harness that power, we first have to solve one of its biggest, most frustrating problems: the fact that a star doesn't really like to be controlled. So one of the most promising ways we're trying to do this is with a machine called a tokamak. And the concept, at least in theory, is kind of beautiful. You basically create a plasma that's hotter than the center of the sun, and then you trap it inside a powerful magnetic field. You are, quite literally, trying to build a star in a jar. And right there, that's the catch. Because this superheated, super-energized plasma, it does not want to be contained. It's this wild, chaotic force of nature. And when it breaks free, even for a split second, it can threaten the entire experiment. So to really get why the new breakthrough we're about to cover is such a big deal, we've got to first understand the machine itself and this core challenge that scientists have been wrestling with for decades. Okay, so this is a tokamak. See those massive coils? They generate this incredibly intense but totally invisible magnetic cage. And that cage is designed to hold the plasma in that perfect donut shape you see, keeping it from ever touching the reactor walls so it can get hot enough for fusion to happen. The problem is, the plasma is always pushing back. It's constantly creating these little kinks and loops and wrinkles in its magnetic cage. We call this plasma instability. And in the blink of an eye, the plasma can burst out of its confinement. When that happens, you get a massive energy loss, the reaction just stops, and you can unleash enough force to seriously damage or even melt parts of the reactor. And, it turns out that not all of these plasma tantrums are created equal. Scientists actually have categories for them, based on how they act and, more importantly, just how dangerous they are. So there's definitely a hierarchy of risk here. On one side, you have something called edge localized modes, or ELMs. You can think of these as repetitive, dangerous hiccups at the plasma's edge. But then you have disruptions. These are the big ones. We're talking catastrophic failures, a total shutdown of the plasma that can create these runaway electrons moving at nearly the speed of light. And those can literally melt right through the reactor wall. This quote really paints the perfect picture of what an ELM is like. It's not a complete collapse, but it's like having a solar flare go off inside the machine. It's this violent, repeating burst that lashes out from the plasma, just blasting the inside of the tokamak with intense heat. So yeah, figuring out how to manage these flares has been a huge focus for fusion research. And believe me, this hunt for control has been a marathon, not a sprint. ELMs were first spotted way back in 1981, which kicked off this 40-year-long journey. Scientists have tried just about everything, from tweaking the magnets to brand new theories, all of which has led us right to the AI breakthrough we're about to dive into. So, how did scientists first try to tackle this? Well, the initial strategy wasn't about stopping these instabilities completely. It was more about making them less destructive. It was all about damage control, mitigation. And two main techniques really rose to the top: something called resonant magnetic perturbations, or RMPs for short, and pellet injection. And honestly, both are incredibly clever approaches. RMPs are a perfect example of fighting fire with fire. You use these special coils to create this subtle magnetic wobble. The whole idea is to break one huge, dangerous problem down into thousands of tiny, harmless ones. It's like you're gently letting pressure leak out of the plasma, preventing that massive buildup that leads to a giant destructive flare. Pellet injection works on a pretty similar principle. By shooting tiny, frozen pellets of fuel into the edge of the plasma, you can trigger smaller, more frequent ELMs. So again, the goal is the same: relieve that pressure in a controlled way, making the bursts more like a steady drizzle instead of a destructive downpour. But here's the thing: all of those are reactive measures, right? They're managing the symptoms. But what if you could cure the disease? What if you could stop the instability before it even has a chance to form? Well, this is where artificial intelligence completely changes the game. Over at the D3DD facility in San Diego, a team did exactly that. They built an AI controller that marks this huge shift in strategy. It's no longer about reacting to an instability, it's about proactively avoiding it in the first place. And it does this with unbelievable speed. The AI can actually predict a potential instability up to 300 milliseconds before it even happens. Now, to you and me, that sounds like the blink of an eye. But in the world of plasma physics, My friends, that is an eternity. It is more than enough time to step in and act. And as the research leader Eamon Coleman explains, the real secret here was learning. This AI wasn't just programmed with a bunch of complex physics equations. No, it learned from the data of thousands of previous experiments to recognize the super subtle warning signs that trouble was brewing. So here's how it actually works. First, the AI trains in a simulator, going over tons of data from past experiments, learning what works and what doesn't. Then, in a live experiment, it's constantly watching the plasma. The second it predicts trouble is coming, it instantly acts, automatically tweaking things like the plasma's shape or the power of the heating beams. And the result? The instability is just avoided. It never even forms. And the fusion reaction just keeps on going, stable and powerful. Look, this success isn't just about solving one problem. This really opens up a whole new way of thinking about how to control a fusion reaction. So, why does this matter so much for the future of fusion energy? Because this AI approach gives us a blueprint. It's a proof of concept that can be scaled up and adapted to predict and avoid a whole range of other instabilities, not just ELMs. It tackles one of the biggest roadblocks still standing between us and an actual working fusion power plant. And all of this leads to one final, really fascinating question. As we study the decisions this AI controller is making, which, by the way, are sometimes totally different from what a human operator would do, we might actually learn something new about physics itself. The AI might not just be a tool to control the star in the jar. It might end up being the teacher that helps us finally understand its heart.